Here's an interview from one of our past shows on Rock and Metal Revival. If you're interested in hearing full shows, go to our Facebook page and check out our list of affiliates for times and places where you can hear Rock and Metal Revival.
Right there is the title track to the latest from the Dead Daisies called Holy Ground. And we want to welcome back to the Revival lead guitarist from the Dead Daisies, Doug Aldrich. Welcome back to the show, Doug.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on the show, and it's no secret we are big fans of the Dead Daisies here at Rock and Metal Revival. And with this latest release, we hear a little different sound from the Dead Daisies with Glenn Hughes on lead vocals. Tell us how this all came together. I heard there was quite a jam to start it all off.
Yeah, it turns out that John Corabi wanted to go do his solo stuff for a bit, and we had the opportunity to work with Glenn and thought that would be really cool. And management reached out to him, and I've been friends with Glenn for years, but they called me and said, "Hey, we've been speaking with Glenn, and what do you think?" And I said, "Man, that would be amazing." Glenn is, he's the voice of rock, right? So yeah. I was like, they said, give him a call and see what what he thinks or what you think. And I called him and I go, "Is this for real?" And he goes, "Doug, it's time for you and I to make some music with the Dead Daisies. It's time." And I had worked with Glenn for several years, a year or two before I joined the Dead Daisies. I worked with Glenn, and so it's just kind of, it's all everything's related. So Glenn and I got together with David and started writing. We went from there. It's just it did start with an initial jam in New York City, just to feel it out, and we had a blast.
So, now that Glenn's in the band, when you first jammed with him, what surprised you most, his voice or his talent on a bass? I'll
tell you what, Glenn is renowned for his voice. Everybody knows that. Mm-hmm. But he is a ferocious bass player. When we toured together, that was some of the funnest jamming I'd ever done, was because, Glenn, he'll all of a sudden start railing and playing like lead bass. So yeah. If I'm soloing and I hear him doing that, I'll kind of back off and give him some space, and it's kind of cool, and he's brilliant, Yeah. It feels great to play. His bass sound, especially too, is ginormous. So it's really it's been a really cool thing for the band.
Sweet.
Well, with the state of the world and especially the music industry right now, it must have made it difficult to write and record a new album, being spread out all over the world with the pandemic, especially with the new lineup.
We did the majority of the album we did prior to the pandemic, so we weren't really affected by that. The challenge now is to do promotion and talk to you guys while I'm taking care of the family at home, doing dad stuff. That's my challenge.
Now,
all because of the pandemic.
Yeah, definitely.
But actually, we had a blast. We did it in the south of France at it was like a chateau with a studio built in, and man, what a killer place for us to bond as a band, get tight with each other, emotionally and musically. It was a perfect situation. There was nowhere to go. We were sleeping under the same roof, and then the studio was attached. So basically, just wake up, go have some breakfast, and go jam all day, and then we'd have a family dinner. Sit down dinner with the band and the crew and the management, and it was great. We could really laser focus in on this album.
Cool. Now, guitar technology's improved quite a bit since you and I. I mean, we're both about the same age. Are you using any of the modeling amps and all that stuff, or are you straight through the amp kind of thing, amp and a mic?
Yeah, I mean there's no compare. I mean there is a comparison because it's really close. There's some companies that are really doing great stuff, but there is nothing that moves air like a real amp and a cabinet and a mic, and the way it reacts to the air and the sound hitting it and going through the mic pre's and all that stuff. That whole thing, little by little, has been emulated, but I don't think it's 100%. And so I took I have a Marshall amp that I've had since 1981, and it's been modded and whatever. It's a JMP Mark IV, a super lead, I guess you call it, and thing sounds amazing. I brought that, and I brought a 68 Plexi.
Ooh, nice.
That had been tweaked, and David Lowey's got a Friedman BE 100 that's a killer amp. So that's what we primarily use. There were a couple times when, like little bits, so you need a special sound, and sometimes it's like, okay, with just that little thing, it's not really prominent in the mix. I can go ahead and use a plug-in. But I didn't use any modeling amps. It was only some plugins in Pro Tools.
Okay, cool.
Doug, now I've been a Daisies fan since that first EP, and I've noticed right off the bat that this really sounds a little heavier. Was that the direction you guys intended to go when you all got together?
We weren't necessarily trying to get heavier. We were just trying to write songs that we liked and thought that would represent this new collaboration. And it had been, when the last two albums prior to this, we co-wrote a lot of stuff with Marty Fredrickson, especially on the vocal end and the lyrics and stuff like that. And he's an amazing writer, great as a producer. But Glenn does that stuff by himself. He writes the lyrics and the melodies himself, and so right there, it definitely changed it in a melodic way. And then his bass playing is got a very heavy English flavor, which from Birmingham. Same, he's been in Black Sabbath, so it probably all kind of came together that way. But some of the riffs that Glenn brought in were really simple and heavy, and then it was a matter of capturing the song to be the best it could be, and then the good thing is there is some like the title track and My Fate and Saving Grace are all really heavy songs, but Glenn sings really melodically on those, so they're heavy but they're still accessible.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Now I'm really going to pick your brain here. What's your favorite recorded guitar solo that you've done, and what's your favorite one to play live?
That's difficult.
Told you.
I would probably say there's a solo on My Fate. Sorry, not My Fate. A solo on Far Away, the end track on this album that I'm excited to play live, and I really felt that one. There's always stuff that I'm proud of or that I like. There's some stuff happens really quickly, like solo for Holy Ground. I just kind of fired it off and thought, something like that, and they were like, "Don't change the thing." That's like, it's fine. It's great. We love it.
Nice.
So and then other things like Far Away, I worked on the melody, and there's a solo on Come Alive that's very, very melodic and kind of. I was trying for like a Gary Moore vibe. That's one of my favorite guys, and of course it doesn't sound like Gary, but I was influenced by him. And but yeah, it's always a thing where either you get lucky and you fire off something and it just seems to work, or sometimes you'll get melodies in your head and you really want to kind of jam through those things and see how what I call say you got a melody that's 3 notes and it goes bing, bing, bing. Then what are you going to do? On the edge of that, I call it the corner. It's the corners where you transition to the next part where it, if you got a melody that works, you want to have the transition lead it somewhere so it grows or comes down or whatever. So in that situation, when you're kind of thinking about that melody, it's nice to experiment with the turns, with the corners, and see where it leads you. You might go from bing, 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 and then do a really quick flurry into another bend, and so or you might do a slide off and then slide back up with your finger. I mean, it could be a lot of different ways to go. It depends on how you want the solo to build. So it just depends on the track. There's been songs in the past that I spent like, you know, a whole day working on the solo. And, you know, be like, then I'd listen to it and go, yeah, it's pretty cool, but it's just not quite exactly what, I mean, something's missing, you know, and I'd have to hit it again.
Nice.
Well, Doug, a few weeks back, I had the pleasure of speaking with Simon Wright about the reissues of the 2 live Dio albums that you were both on. Do you have any memories that you'd want to share with us that stick out from those 2 shows, Doug?
Oh, man, there was so many. The first memory was in 2002. It was Friday the 13th. We were in New York City, and we had a day off prior to that. And I just remember, you know, kind of wanting to just tighten up my whole performance, and I went through the whole show a couple times, and went through the guitar solo ideas a bunch of times, and I was just trying to focus on the day, so that when I got there, I'd be like, I did the homework, I did the work prior. Now I just got to have fun, and but I was still really nervous. You know, it was my first DVD, and knowing that that's going to live forever. You know, and then and it came out, and I thought, man, it sounds killer. The mix was great. You know, I at that time was doing a stereo mono rig where it would be like left, center, right. Center was the mono dry, and then the effects, whatever I was doing, was on the outsides. And I was going through 6 cabinets, and it was a big sound. And you never know how they're going to capture it, but they did capture it pretty well. It sounds really good.
Yeah.
And then Holy Diver Live, I remember it was I think it was a Saturday night in London. We were at a hotel kind of across town, and it was rainy, and normally we would have a van, you know, hired to take us directly from the hotel, but Ronnie had a buddy that was had driven down from Wolverhampton, I think, and he wanted to drive us. He offered to drive us, you know, and save a few bucks or whatever, just to hang out with Ronnie and talk a little bit during the drive. And we were driving, and it was like, I'm looking at my watch, and it's getting late, and it was like almost, we were going to be on stage in like, you know, 30 minutes, and we hadn't even sound checked yet. And it was a tight showtime. We had to be done by a certain time, and blah, blah, blah. So we're like, really, I was starting to freak out. Ronnie's just chatting away with his friend, and me and Simon and the guys were sitting there going, how are we looking? You know, I forget his friend's name. And he goes, actually, I'm lost. It was like,
oh no!
You know, yeah, and so Ronnie was like, oh, what the F, man? Come on, you know, we have a DVD to do. So somehow we made a phone call and got the directions. And it was rainy. It was like a nasty night. Traffic was bad. We finally got there with like 15 minutes to spare. We did literally, Ronnie didn't sound check, but I did like a 2-minute just play through just to make sure what was happening, and then we just got dressed, and there was a billion people backstage. Just got dressed really quick, said hi to some people, and just jumped right on stage. Didn't even have a chance to warm up. And Ronnie was actually a little bit ill that show, but he sounded great, you know. I remember I was feeling pretty confident, but I hadn't, you know, I was filling in on that tour and hadn't memorized all the endings. Like Ronnie would do these very elaborate endings, and I would have to make a cheat sheet sometimes, and I just started to get rid of the cheat sheets on the endings, and so I was a little bit nervous about that, but it worked out good. And then I remember the worry song for me in the set was Gates of Babylon, because that guitar solo is like, for me, one of Ritchie's most killer classical style solos. And I don't play like Ritchie, but I love Ritchie. But so I wanted to do that. I wanted to do that solo justice, and I felt like, okay, if I can just get through that solo and do it halfway decent, then I'm going to be coasting downhill. And I got through it, and